my favorite sort of maybe less obvious things to be concerned about is the birth rate. I think it's important that people have enough babies to support civilization, and we don't sort of dwindle away. And because they say civilization might die with a bang or with a whimper. And if we don't have enough kids, then we will die with a whimper in adult diapers.
Joining me now, my friend Mike Slater, host of the Politics by Faith podcast. And also, he did a special on this, The Road to Human Extinction on the Declining Birth Rate, which may or may not have inspired one of our producers to have a baby, which he had 9 months later. Congratulations again, John. Mike, okay, first of all, let's deal with the why. But why aren't we having enough babies? Why are people not reproducing? And I'm obviously not judging. Some people can't, some people don't want them, but society as a whole is not making babies anymore. Why?
I take most of the credit for John's family growing, by the way. I just like to comment on that. There's two main reasons, I think. First, by far, feminism, right? Feminism tells women that the most important thing in your life is your career. And you can worry about your family later. There's no biological clock. You can have a kid when you're like, 37. And then eventually women are like, oh, I'd like to have a kid. Oh, wait, I can only maybe fit one. Okay, that's a big one. And then the other thing I would blame on the men's side is pornography. Men can get this pseudo fake fix with pornography as opposed to having a real relationship. Men used to get married early, like high school or right out of high school. And now the average age for a man to get married in America is 29. So we're just starting families way later. And then you can throw in materialism, and then you have this weird death cult of environmentalism. It says oh, I don't even want to bring people into this world. It's get over yourself. Slaves had kids. People during the Great Depression had kids, and you don't want to bring people into the world because you think times are so tough. Get over yourself. So you put all that stuff together, and we're literally not making enough people to continue the existence of a country. That's what Elon is talking about. We may not exist anymore. It's one of the most mind-boggling things. And what a sign, too, of civilizational, literal decline that the people of our country don't want to make more of ourselves. That's should be a huge red flag that people don't want to procreate anymore. There's a massive rot in our country right now that we got to get to the bottom of.
Mike, can you explain why are people against children? And this is what I mean. I'm not talking about having babies again, but sometimes when I talk to people, they really genuinely do not want kids. And I'm not judging people who don't want them. People live their own lives. But as a father, they're the greatest freaking joy in the world. There's nothing better than being a dad. There's nothing better than giving my sons crap about something or teaching them something, or it's just the best. And then watching them grow and fail and succeed. It's the best. And people will talk about it as if it's this horrible burden. Where did that come from?
Yeah, that's such a great. So I call it celebrating ugliness. That's the term I've given this, where parents will talk about what terrible parents they are and how awful it is and what a mess our house is and how I'm a bad mom and I'm teaching them how to swear and we eat junk, blah, blah, blah. And it's what are you doing? We should be celebrating the joy of parenting. So I think there's been a lot of that for a long time that's not healthy at all, to say the least. I think at the root of it is just selfishness. Right? It's me, my career, my life, my money. I need a bigger house. When you're talking about the joy of parenting, it reminds me of a Jerry Seinfeld interview. He didn't get married or have kids until he was older, but for a man, that's more acceptable, though having kids is a young man's game, as you know. Getting on the ground and wrestling is a young man's game, right? It's hard work. It's exhausting to have kids. We have 4. Right? And the reason, by the way, we had that 4th one was because of this issue. We were on the fence. Should we have a 4th? It's yes, I'll get to that in a second. But anyway, Jerry Seinfeld, real life Jerry Seinfeld, said, why did no one tell me how awesome this is? Everyone complains all the time, but where were you telling me that this is the coolest thing ever to have kids? And I think we really need to accentuate that. I think we need to tell people in high school even hey, having a family is the best. You should do it. It's way better than partying at the club. So there's this account, I forget who it is, I don't know his name, but he's on Instagram, whatever. And he interviews these people at spring break. And he's what would you do for $1,000? Or what's the craziest thing you've done on spring break? And it's like, oh my gosh, like these people are so completely lost. They have no clue about what is good and wonderful about life. Like, we should be teaching these kids to get out of the club, stop wasting your time, and go and start a family. It's way better. It's not a drag, it's the best. You and I as dads, we have way more fun than any dude does at a club. And I just want to accentuate that. And so my advice to everyone when it comes to this birth rate issue is have that next kid. Do it. Get married young, and then maybe that ship sailed for you, but give this advice to younger people. Get married young. Don't worry about your career, women, okay? Don't worry about it. Have kids. You can have your career later. Reject that feminist lie, and then have that extra kid. If you have 2 and you're like, I don't know if we should have 3, do it. We need more of you. It's the opening scene of Idiocracy, where the 2 like smart people are like, well, I don't know, we should wait for our 401k to be a bigger, or the stock market, or I don't know, we should wait till I finish my advanced degrees before, and then before you know it, they don't have any kids. But Cletus is over here, banging every girl he sees, knocking up everyone, kids everywhere. It's like, no, we want fewer of those people. We want more of you. Please make more of you. If you're listening to Jesse Kelly right now, you are a good person, and we need more of you in this world.
It is weird that the people who watch are good people, but I'm not. That is odd. You know what? Let's tackle another aspect of this, because it is a very real aspect of this. The LGBTQ endless social conditioning. I don't have to approach this from any other way, although I do often on the show, but I can set everything else aside. Left, right, middle, belief system, everything. As a society, Gen Z, 19% now identifying as LGBTQ. You can't make enough babies if 20% of your young people are removing themselves from the don't make any more babies pool, Mike. It doesn't work. This stuff is going to end the country. It doesn't matter how you feel about it. That's true. That's just math.
I mean, yes, literally, if you cut off male genitalia, that's it. That's the end of that line of having children. And I remember this a while ago, very early. Oh, it was at the beginning of the gay marriage debate, even. And people were like, oh, like Christians were having a tough time articulating why gay marriage is wrong and immoral and just unwise. And I remember people making this argument of, well, Adam and Steve can't make babies. And I remember that not being like the most compelling argument at the time. I wasn't really a Christian at the time. But like, no, like that's super fundamental. And now we see what a massive problem it is. Every country every woman needs to have 2.1 kids in order for a country's birth rate to remain the same, or population to remain the same. 2.1 kids per woman, right? Japan's very famous for having a low birth rate at 1.3 kids per woman, but they're not alone. Like Germany, all these other European countries are 1.5. South Korea's 0.9. I mean, these countries won't exist. 0.9 kids per woman. But America, we're no better. We're 1.6. The only reason we're just above the birth rate is because of immigration. But that's it. So we're below the birth rate as it is here in America. And as you said, like cutting off the reproductive organs of our youth is certainly not going to help us in our effort to continue to exist as a nation. The Adam and Steve argument is actually like an existential crisis. These 2 people can't make kids, and that's bad for the future of our country.
Well, cutting off the necessary equipment generally hurts your efforts to have babies. All right, Mike, before I let you go,
actually,
let me
throw one more thing your way. So this just jumped in my head. Sorry, Jesse. Everyone talks about the Atlantic slave trade. Slaves came from Africa to America over the Atlantic Ocean. No one ever talks about the Middle Eastern slave trade. And one reason why it's not as known today is because the Middle Eastern slave leaders would turn the men into eunuchs. They would cut off their genitalia and become part of whatever. They take off. So there's not as much. There's no black people in the Middle East. Like that's the bottom line, right? That portion of this, because they would cut off the genitalia. So like there's a proof right there. Like why are there no slave descendants from Africa and the Middle East today? It's because they cut off their organs, right? So why are we doing that to ourselves here in America? Sorry, I had to throw that in there.
No, it's a good tidbit. All right, you have a Second Amendment special coming up. What are you talking about?
Yeah, so a lot of gun stuff, like crazy, horrible, tragic, ridiculous stories like shooting kids whose basketball goes in yards and stuff like that. So I think even a lot of conservatives are on shaky ground right now when it comes to the Second Amendment even, and why it exists and why we need it. So we look at it from the biblical perspective. I've never really done that before. What does the Bible say about guns? Now, obviously guns weren't invented, but what does it say about self-defense? What does it say about weapons? What does it say about private property and protecting yourself? It's very, very fascinating. There's a line that everyone thinks is in the Bible. Live by the sword, die by the sword. It's not there. It's not there. Isn't that unbelievable? Almost everyone, live by the sword, finish the sentence, and they can say it. And they're like, oh, yeah, it's in the Bible. It's not in the Bible. Jesus is much more specific. And when you figure that out, you're like, oh, that's what he means. And now it all makes sense. And our founding fathers knew this. Our founding fathers were intimately, deeply, passionately understanding natural law and the Bible and common sense and history. And they knew what they were doing when they wrote the Second Amendment. We have forgotten it, and even conservatives need to get back on track.